$170 million. That's what it cost to make Supergirl. $120 million more just to market it. And after 2 weekends in theaters, it has clawed back about $100 million worldwide combined. Hey, it's Rick, and normally I'd say welcome back, but honestly, welcome to a crime scene, because James Gunn's shiny new DC universe just had its second movie collapse in real time in front of everybody, and the excuses are already flying faster than the box office receipts are shrinking. Let's just rip the band-aid off right now. Week 2 drop, somewhere between 74 and 80%, depending which trade you trust. For the math allergic among you, that means 4 out of every 5 people who showed up opening weekend looked at their friends and said, yeah, don't bother. That's worse than The Flash, worse than Morbius. The only thing that fell harder is Joker 2, and that movie is basically the industry's go-to punchline for how to lose $200 million purposely. So here's the intrigue. Here's what we're actually digging into today. This isn't just a bad opening weekend. This is a movie the studio is already quietly abandoning. Over 1,000 screens pulled before week 3 even started. And the deeper you dig into why, the uglier this gets. Reported fights on set, test scores that were bad for 8 straight months, a studio that saw the warning light and floored it anyway. Stick around, because by the end of this, you're going to understand exactly why Warner Bros. Execs are reportedly avoiding James Gunn's calls this week. Okay, so how does a movie with a comic book queen in the lead and the guy who made Superman a $600 million hit last year end up here? Turns out, it started falling apart way before anyone bought a ticket. Reports say Gunn and director Craig Gillespie were butting heads over the final cut, which is a hilarious thing to hear about a movie from the guy literally running the entire DC universe. If the studio head and the director can't agree on what movie they're making, what exactly did you think the audience was going to get? A group project where nobody read the assignment, apparently, for $290 million. And it gets better. Test screenings were reportedly scoring in the 60s for 8 months straight. 8 months! That's not a fluke test screening on a bad Tuesday. That's the movie repeatedly telling the studio, hey, people aren't loving this, and the studio going, cool, release date's locked, ship it. Meanwhile, the marketing team is out here selling you Crypto the Superdog and Jason Momoa as a space biker named Lobo. Like, that's gonna paper over a script nobody was confident in. Spoiler, a cute dog cannot save your quarterly earnings call. And the real gut punch? Reviews from actual audiences weren't even bad. Mid-70s on Rotten Tomatoes. People who saw it mostly liked it. Nobody came back to see it again, and nobody dragged their friends. That's not a "the movie is bad" problem. That's a "nobody trusted this brand enough to show up" problem. And that one's way scarier for James Gunn than one bad review cycle. So let's talk numbers one more time, because the numbers are where this really gets savage. Warner Bros. Reportedly needs around $300 million domestic just to break even on this thing. Right now, the film's global total is sitting around $100 to $115 million after 3 weekends. You do not close a $200 million gap by week 4. That gap doesn't close. That gap gets written off in a shareholder report next quarter with a very carefully worded paragraph about strategic realignment. And Warner already made their move, pulling over 1,000 screens before weekend 3 even hit. That's studio speak for "we've stopped believing in this movie." They're rushing it to digital by late July, which is fast, suspiciously fast, for a movie that was supposed to anchor a whole cinematic universe. DC co-CEO Peter Safran did the obligatory damage control, telling reporters it's just one component of a broader long-term strategy, which is corporate for "please, for the love of God, let this be forgotten by the time Clayface comes out in October." Because here's the real stakes nobody's saying out loud. This isn't really about Supergirl anymore. This is a stress test for whether Gunn's entire DCU rebuild actually works, or whether Superman was a one-hit fluke propping up a house of cards. If Clayface flops the same way in October, long-term strategy starts sounding a lot more like long-term unemployment. Alright, that's the Wreckage Report. Comment below, is this a script problem, a Gunn problem, or is the whole superhero genre just running on fumes? So, what's actually still coming for the DCU after this mess? Let's go through it, because Warner Bros. Has already locked in the next 3 big swings. First up, Lanterns. HBO series, 8 episodes, dropping in August.
Kyle Chandler plays an older, battle-worn Hal Jordan. No origin story. They're dropping you straight into a guy who's already seen everything. Aaron Pierre plays the rookie, Jon Stewart. The format is the interesting part. It's structured more like a detective mystery than a cosmic superhero show, built around the murder investigation in rural Nebraska. Showrunners are Chris Mundy, Damon Lindelof, and Tom King. Nathan Fillion also comes back as Guy Gardner, tying it straight into Superman. And Gunn himself has publicly called this one pretty instrumental to the wider DCU story. His words, not mine. So this isn't some side quest. It's supposed to matter. Second, Clayface, October 23rd. Full body horror movie, not your typical superhero fare. Tom Rhys-Harris plays Matt Hagen, an actor whose face gets disfigured and who turns to an experimental treatment that slowly transforms him into a shape-shifting monster. Script comes from Mike Flanagan, the guy behind Dr. Sleep, and it's directed by James Watkins, who did Speak No Evil. Naomi Ackie and Max Minghella round out the cast. Here's the detail that stings a little now. Warner Bros. Actually delayed Clayface's release by about a month and a half, from September to late October, specifically to give Supergirl some breathing room in the schedule, so the two movies wouldn't compete for eyeballs. Supergirl didn't need breathing room. It needed CPR. Third, and the big one, Man of Tomorrow, July 9th, 2027. This is the direct sequel to 2025's Superman, the actual flagship follow-up. David Cornsweet's back in the Cape, Rachel Brosnahan returns as Lois Lane, and Nicholas Holt's Lex Luthor finally gets his full comic-accurate power suit on screen for the first time ever in live action. Lars Eidinger joins the cast as Brainiac, and Gunn's described the plot as Superman and Luthor being forced to work together against a much bigger threat,